Just finished episodes 8 and 9 of Agatha All Along, and I feel pretty confident saying that it is maybe like the best Marvel show. One of the best, for sure. It's right up there with, I guess, what do people think are the best Marvel shows? Loki usually gets this, especially season 1. And then WandaVision, I would say it fits right there. Ms. Marvel is the best reviewed. I really like She-Hulk. X-Men 97 is not in the MCU, so usually isn't in this conversation. So really, it's usually Loki, WandaVision, or Ms. Marvel. And I don't know, I think this is as good as all of them, if not better. It was such a satisfying conclusion. It wrapped up a lot of our arcs nicely while leaving a couple of things open for the future. It feels like if there's one thing that Agatha All Along succeeded at, in ways that I think other Marvel shows have gotten much better at. I think whether you like She-Hulk or not, I think it's hard to deny it feels like a television show. It is structured like a television show. And I think that's something that Agatha All Along did really well, is every episode was a specific story, usually in one setting or featuring one challenge, a little mini arc that the characters could complete where we learned a little bit more about them. Like, it's silly because it feels like what I'm describing is like the basics, but especially in the streaming landscape where all these different streaming services are trying to figure out, like, how do you make a streaming only show? Do you make the episodes all have to be, you know, a certain length, or do you just kind of let them go with it? And do you just take an hour and a half long movie and cut it up into 6 episodes? So I like that Agatha All Along feels like a proper, like, mini series. But beyond that, I think it's a really interesting look at this character. It is a show that, I mean, I think a lot of people are going to watch it again after you get all the information in episodes 8 and 9, which we will spoil, but I'll give you the warning. Like, you find out things that make not only, you know, episode 1 of Agatha All Along different, you find out things that make, like, episode 1 of WandaVision kind of different. It makes all of WandaVision feel different now that we know what Agatha's all about, what she has always wanted, or kind of what goals may have been in mind, and then maybe at a certain point she pivoted, decided to try to get something else out of this. Like, this show makes everything that was already great about WandaVision better. I think the performances were great. I think this is a very well cast show, and that has been clear since pretty much the beginning, but especially seeing some of the payoff with different characters. I think the casting is really strong, and I think, like, the costumes, the looks, the settings, all of the set design, spectacular, looked great, very fun. The budget was used super well. I cannot stress, like, how impressed I am with the fact that this is, like, the cheapest show they've made so far. Because one thing I've heard from more than one person in the last few weeks is that either they or their significant other only watch WandaVision and Agatha All Along. Like, they don't get into the other Marvel stuff. This is just the corner for them. And I think that is great. And that only works if Marvel is able to produce some more experimental shows on a smaller budget that may appeal to a smaller audience, but based on how much they cost to make, will still be successful, and you can still continue making shows in that line. You know, I think this opened the door for a lot of things in the future, and I think we're almost going to see, like, in the way that, like, we kind of hoped this would happen with, like, Guardians kicking off the cosmic side of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which it almost has, but not quite, right? Like, there's no other cosmic stories set in the MCU that only feature Guardians characters, that if you like the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, you would watch these. Like, they could easily make a Rick Ryder show or a Phi Lavelle show or something like that, and have that be like the cosmic stuff. So hey, if you're only in this for James Gunn, that's the stuff you watch. And then when the next Avengers shows up, you'll watch what you think you need to know to understand it, and then you'll go in and you'll still have a good time. Like, that's how comics works. And I think Agatha All Along is the first step in proving that that can be done here too, in this big shared universe where you are not expected to watch everything. I think that's going to be a lot of next year too, with, like, the Spider-Man cartoon and the R-rated Daredevil show. Like, they are not for the same audience, and I think there are going to be a lot of people who pick zones of the MCU they're interested in. Like, the Daredevil zone will definitely be one. Maybe that'll branch out to being like the street level hero zone. I don't know. I mean, that would be cool if they continue that. Like, Moon Knight kept going, maybe got that Punisher spinoff, something like that. That would all be great. But anyway, what I'm getting at is that only works if these shows are inexpensive and good and can, like, keep an audience interested and don't cost $1 bazillion to make. And this was that. Agatha All Along was totally that. So I think it is really fun. We're going to talk about spoilers after this, but I will say, like, if you haven't watched it yet, if you were like, I'm not going to watch it unless I hear it's really good, I do think it's really good. And I would maybe talk to some other people who aren't as big Marvel shills as I am. Like, I don't want to say I'm a shill, but I do, you know, I have an Agatha action figure right here that I bought before this show had come out. So I'm a kind of guy who's, like, predisposed to liking something with Agatha in it. That being said, I also saw Secret Invasion and didn't like it, so I don't love all this stuff. But, like, see what other people who've watched this say, and then go into, like, episodes 1 and 2 with an open mind. I think you'll have a really good time. Alright, spoilers for episodes 8 and 9. We got a lot of Rio and Agatha. That was the main conflict in episode 8, which was called Follow Me, My Friend, to Glory at the end, which makes sense. End of the road. Loved that the Witch's Road lyrics were all the titles for the episodes. That's great. I love when the episode titles have like a thing. You know, they're not just named like, you know, episode 1, episode 2, or whatever. And by the way, the Witch's Road thing, I remember when they came out at D23 and sang the Witch's Road song. They had all the actors, including Patti LuPone, out in little capes doing the song. And I was like, oh, that's fun. That's good. Is that song really going to be that important over the course of this show? Because it feels like it's going to be something they sing once to open the little door. And then, you know, maybe they'll sing it again while they're in there, like they're doing a musical episode, so that makes sense. But then, like, why are we focusing on it so much? And now, looking back, it's like, oh yeah, that's the whole show. So, yeah, focus on the Witch's Road. Like, having that be front and center this whole time with all of those lyrics and all the conversations characters have been having about it, like, it just makes everything so much more interesting. So, yeah, we got a lot of Rio and Agatha in this episode. I think Rio is fun. I do think part of the fun of Rio was that we didn't know what she was doing. When we know what she's doing, it's a little bit less fun, but I still really liked Aubrey Plaza. I think what they did with her face in that one bit where like kind of the bottom half of her face was skeleton and the nose, and then top half of her face was like normal eyes. Cool. I like that she is like the version of death that is the Grim Reaper in this universe. Like, she feels like she is this construct of the universe, the same way that like the Watcher, I guess, exists. I think their outfits this week were cool. I loved when she carved the thing in the wall. When that happened in the show, she walked up to it and I was like, that looks fake. And then she carved, and I wasn't being like, oh ding, disappoint off, but just like, that doesn't look amazing, but you know what, that's the vibe we're going for. Then she cut through it and I was like, oh, that's cute. It's kind of like when Clea cuts through the thing in the end of Multiverse of Madness. It's like, wow, she's that important. She can cut through the boundary of reality. Little do we know, there is no Witch's Road. It's basically just the set anyway, and that is a much cooler moment in retrospect. I think Agatha in this episode was fun. I think Catherine Hahn is doing so much. There's like, you know, serious Catherine Hahn when she's talking to Billy about what happened to her son or whatever, but then there's also like just up to 11, like acting for the cheap seats, talking to a character that they are 1 foot from, just going all out. And I think we get a little bit of this with like her conversations with Jennifer Kale, where she's just going very crazy. I don't know, she's great. I understand, like, again, looking back at how good the show is, I'm like, I get why Catherine Hahn was doing so much press for this show and was like so into it, and like, because she knew it was really good, and it gave her a really interesting character that I think people are going to be really excited to see more of in the future. The final challenge room thingy was interesting. Just a big silvery room. Here's something. The Jennifer Kale end to her story, I think, was good. In that, two things. One, I don't know how I missed the Boston-Salem connection. Like, we know that Agatha was from Salem and had some connection to Salem in the Salem 7. And obviously, you know, the Salem history of witches. So when Jennifer Kale said she went to Boston and that's where she got bound and lost the ability to use her powers, it did not click in my head like, oh, I wonder if Agatha was around for that. And now that makes sense that that's what it is. I don't mind that it was such a simple thing that she was just like, oh, right, that. Yeah, no, that was probably me. And I don't mind the way Agatha rationalized it as like, hey, man, that's capitalism for you. It's the patriarchy. What are we supposed to do? Very funny. I like that Jennifer Kale, I had so much trouble remembering if it was Hale or Kale. So I like that this week Agatha was like kale, like the vegetable. So now I'll never forget it. Good. I think Jennifer Kale, so we've talked about this many times. She's one of only a few characters who have actually been on the Midnight Suns team, because that team has not shown up very often. They do not have a very deep bench. Some of the characters you'd expect, especially ones from the video game, Blade, Magic, Nico Minoru, are all also on the Midnight Suns. But then older generations have had different characters, like Morbius the Living Vampire, or Jennifer Kale was the witch on, I think, the second generation of the Midnight Suns. I would not be surprised if we get Sashir Zamata showing up in Midnight Suns, the movie or something, as the witch representative, because it seems like Agatha is going to be going doing other stuff now. Agatha is going to be the kid Avenger side of things. Like, she's going to be Billy's sidekick, which I love. So, yeah, I think that gives Jennifer a really good out of this series and into the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe, and also gives us a witch that we can use in some of those other stories that isn't Agatha Harkness. So I think that's cool. So we learned that Tommy, the brother of Billy, the speedster, is out there somewhere. So it seems like the future of these characters is going to be finding him, which it's funny because in Marvel Comics, they found Tommy like by accident, basically. All the young Avengers were just like, hey, look at this. This kid looks like you. Oh, I guess he's your twin. But after they found Tommy and did all that, there's another story called The Children's Crusade, where all the kid Avengers went to find Wanda. A lot of people thought that was what this show was Billy doing a Children's Crusade where at the end of the road he finds Wanda. It became pretty clear over the last couple of weeks that wasn't what he wanted, but either way, it was like, oh, maybe that's what he'll do in the future. Now it's kind of like we're doing the Children's Crusade, the crusade to get the other child, which is Tommy, which I think is cute. It seems like that is the direction this will go in, although, I don't know, will that be like... Because it seems like the next step for this is a Vision show. Vision or something. Vision Quest. And who knows, he's probably gonna make another family just like in WandaVision. It's gonna be Viv and I don't know, Ultron maybe will be there, Victor Mancha, I don't know, there's a bunch of characters it could be. I doubt it will be Tommy, just because he seems like he's kind of on a different track here. But if it is, then that makes sense. Is Billy and Agatha going to find Vision and then finding Tommy, because Vision maybe has some sort of connection to Tommy that the other ones don't have? I don't know. That's the thing with where this ends for me, is it's a lot of possibilities. It's a lot of cool things that can happen, and I want all of them to happen. And I think because the reaction to this is so positive, there will be a bunch of new directions that some of these characters go in that maybe a year ago you wouldn't have expected. But now it's like, no, Agatha's definitely going to have to show up in some Scarlet Witch thing because that's what the people want. The poor people of Westview, man, they just cannot catch a break. They went through the hex. They were out of it for 2 years. And then that one person who they may or may not have known was a witch started acting strange. Not much time seems to have passed, maybe a day. And then the sky is green again, and everything's a mess. And then another superhero kid wearing a Wanda-esque outfit leaves the house and just drives away in a car. I leave. And I guess maybe it's hard to sell your house because it's around where all this stuff happened. Although you kind of figure these would become like attractions, so maybe it would be the kind of thing where like you could sell your house to someone who just wants to live in the same town as the Westview thing, but I guess they can't talk about it, so yeah, they're screwed. You know, they're taking it well. I think if I were them, I'd be doing what Ralph was doing with all kinds of nonsense, and it wouldn't work, especially not with death. But I'd start thinking about it. I think the Agatha Rio fight was fun. I like that we got some blasting glowy things at each other. And I like that Agatha tried to do all the other magic, because, yeah, she still knows how to do that. She would still try to do little spells, and Rio was, like, cutting her Achilles tendon and stuff, just really making her life miserable. And then we got the introduction of Billy. So this is a costume that I've seen a lot of people take shots at online, because Billy has a couple of costumes, a couple of different looks, but it's pretty standard. It's like the colors. It's really about what kind of fabric we're working with. Are we doing, like, a cloak? Is it a cape? Is it, one piece, So I think that what we got here is like maybe the best case scenario. The only thing that I like more, that I think maybe you could kind of evolve him into, is a version where you can kind of see like the stars in his in like the black of his suit. That's something that they've done in the comics at some points. I can't remember when. Second Young Avengers volume, I think. And I'd like to see that as like a power upgrade for him. Also, Disney really beating the allegations of, and allegations thrown around by myself and a lot of people on the podcast, of kind of abusing this first openly gay character thing. And if anything, it becomes kind of a marketing tactic, when in reality it doesn't deliver in the show. I think this was a really good representation on both ways, right? We had the Billy and Eddie, I guess is what that character's name is, the boyfriend. They had a kiss on screen, which was nice. Wasn't, like plot essential, the same way that this was. Like, these two characters just went for it. Like I described before, these two actors as these characters just have chemistry. So like that was a real passionate kiss. That was cool. I think that was good. I also like that Billy's room has the big, for a lot of, I want to say, I guess the second episode, which is episode 9 of the 2 we're going to talk about, the big protect trans kids, like trans flag. That was cool. Just overall, like, it feels like there's a lot of things that people, myself included, have gotten on Marvel's case for half doing, half developing a show. half coming up with a clever ending for Secret Invasion or whatever. But this, they went all the way on all of it, on like the character stuff, on having all these mysteries that unravel over time, and on the representation front that is very important to people, especially with these characters. So the idea that he made the road, I think, is very interesting. I never considered it, and I love a good series of flashbacks where characters say things, you go, oh, that's what they were talking about. So we got at least one of those here, and that was very satisfying. I didn't put it together, but I should have, because everything in his room was already the stuff that was in the road. And I guess for me, when I see that in a show like this, I go, oh, that's his destiny. And in reality, Billy is supposed to be a character that is so powerful and so important, like the Scarlet Witch, that he can just like make stuff like that. So he is above destiny. In the comics, he becomes the Demiurge, which is basically like the god or some sort of deity figure in the Marvel Comics universe. And he doesn't like fully ascend to that position, but he will in the future. So he has a level of awareness that's above pretty much everyone else in comics. And I like how that was represented here by him just inventing the Witch's Road, and how much that feels like Wanda. And yeah, that part was very cool. In the comics, the Witch's Road is a thing, but it's like not a big thing. I want to say it first showed up in a pretty recent Scarlet Witch series. Maybe it's shown up before, but that was the first time I had heard of it, and it was about Agatha and Wanda walking the road for reasons I can't even remember. And also, funny enough, in that series, Agatha was dead, so she was a ghost. Now, Agatha's been a ghost a couple of times in the comics and stuff. People familiar with the video game Midnight Suns will remember that she was a ghost in that. And I think that is a perfect place for this character, partially because, like, as a ghost, she can do things and, like, be in places where, why would she be there? Like, she's not going to go to a Young Avengers meeting as a person, but as a ghost, it's like, yeah, she's stuck with Billy, she's going to help him out. But also, Agatha did not have, like, meaningful relationships on Earth. Whenever a character ends up as a ghost in that way, like, oh man, all of their loved ones, what about their significant other and stuff? It's like, no, her significant other's death and all of her loved ones are dead. And it's really just this Billy kid who she can hang out with now. So I think this is a very good ending for her. So in episode 9, Maiden Mother Crone, this was mostly old-timey, like Salem flashbacks to the 1700s. And I think this story was great. So as much as I like the reveal that Billy made the road, and the road was all things that were like just in Billy's head because he had heard about it before. At that point, it kind of seemed like it was like he manifested the road, as if any witch who used their power and like had imagination, that's how the road would appear to them. But it wasn't like he had invented the idea of the road. So I was happy with that revelation. But then episode 9 revelation, so much better, that the road was nonsense and it was just a song that Agatha and her son sang that they eventually turned into a whole big thing. But then after he died, other people started coming up to her and being like, hey, you're the person from the Witch's Road. And in her grief or whatever, she's like, yeah, that's me. And they just started using this as a way to eat witches' souls and stuff. So the idea that the Witch's Road was never a thing is very clever. And looking back, like, this is a thing that when she says this in the show, you're like, oh my God, of course. Because every time a character's like, do the Witch's Road, she's like, it's not a real thing. And she seems more surprised than anybody when the road opens. Love the detail that, and again, why going back is going to be so much fun. When they're arguing about the actual lyrics to the thing, and she's like, it's a 2. And the other person says, no, it's true. She's like, I would know, my mom is the reason everybody knows the song. And looking back, Agatha's like, no, it was 2, because it was Agatha and her son. And she was just kind of biting her tongue because she didn't want to say, no, I wrote the song with my kid as a bit, and it spiraled way further out than I was expecting. But this is the true lyric to this. Loved all the costumes. I love going back in time and forward in time and stuff, seeing like 80s Agatha. And I think it is really cool that looking back, the road, the whole thing of the show was Agatha all along. You know, it was just a little lie kind of thing that she made up. I think that's makes the title even more clever. Like, it's a really clever show, really well constructed narrative. So much stuff is so slowly revealed. You can figure after episode 7, the tarot episode with Lilia, that's it. That's the peak of the show going to tell you things. Like, they're going to say some things about death and stuff, but it's not going to be like a big shock. And instead you get like, there's just so much. This show had so many ideas. Like, I think it's so cool that I guess Jack Schaefer and the team over there at Marvel thought about it and went, what if the road isn't a real thing? Okay, then why are they on it? Well, it's because Billy can manifest it, sure, but what is it? Like, where did it come from? And they were like, oh, this can be an artifact of her son, something her and her son did, And now, when you look back at WandaVision, it's like, what was Agatha after? Well, in the beginning, she's after witches. She wants powerful wishes because that's what she wants. She seeks them out, steals their power. And she says that. But then, episode, I don't know, maybe whatever it is that is the 80s episode, when she's bringing things back from the dead, and you're like, oh, this is what Agatha wants. She wants to bring her son back from the dead because that's all she's wanted this whole time. And she hasn't been looking for it as actively, but it's because the Scarlet Witch hasn't been an option. But it's like, oh, wait, Scarlet Witch, can you do this? Like, is this something we can work out? And then when it became clear that that wasn't going to work out, she's like, all right, I'll steal Scarlet Witch's power and then see what I can do. But I just think that, like, now this makes watching WandaVision so much more interesting. All the Agatha stuff so much more interesting. I like the look of Ghost Agatha. I liked how she looks different. Like, it's not just Agatha with, like, you know, a filter. She has kind of a little bit more age. Like, she looks cool, and I like the way she kind of interacts with Billy. I just feel like the idea of having, and maybe it's because it's a thing that happens in the comics, but the idea of just Agatha Harkness over your shoulder going, don't do that, is very fun. And a character like that, who is just, you know, like the genie or the Great Gazoo or some sort of like sidekick who nobody else can really see, has all the information but is very snarky, can be very fun. I hope we see Aubrey Plaza again, but I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see her for a while. There's not a whole lot of things for Death to do. Like, when people talk about Death in the comics and they relate it to like other versions of Death in other books or things like that, like, Death is a big part of the Infinity Gauntlet storyline, and obviously characters die in Marvel comics. Like, Captain Marvel dies, so Death is involved in that story, but there's not as much death for all the characters that have died. This like skeleton of Death showing up is not that big of a deal. So when you think about like Secret Wars, it's not like, oh, obviously she's going to show up there, because it's like, is it really a Death kind of thing? Like, maybe, but I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see her again, maybe ever. And I'd be totally fine with that, because I think this was very good. I'm just really impressed, especially because episode 8 starts with, or at least did for me, maybe they'll change this eventually, like this little sizzle reel for what to expect in 2025. And they have a lot of stuff, a lot of shows they're working on, and they are all kinds of things. Like, you've got, you know, What If, Marvel Zombies, the Spider-Man show, and you've also got Ironheart. You've also got Wonder Man. Looking at them, you're going to be like, is this one actually going to be good? And I do think Ironheart is a little bit tough, because that seems like it was done before maybe Marvel got their act together. That doesn't mean it's definitely going to be bad. But looking at a show like Wonder Man, I'm like, having seen Agatha and enjoying that so much, I'm really excited for what Wonder Man is, what the Hollywood version of a show like that is. Then yeah, next year's Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four, and Brave New World. So much stuff. And Daredevil, obviously. Daredevil is going to be big. But it seems like Daredevil is maybe the first, I don't know if Agatha could be this, because it seems like Agatha has been Agatha since before the Marvel retooling. Whereas Daredevil, we had one version of Daredevil before the big Marvel TV Studios retool, and then we have this new version that seems like it's going to be better, or if not just better, like more of a show. So I think maybe Daredevil will be the first time we'll see the fruits of that. We'll see, have they figured it out? Do they understand what makes a great TV show and how that is different from what makes a great movie chopped up into 5-6 pieces? But I mean, this is as good of a sign as anything. I'm so excited for all of the people who said this was stupid and this was a bad idea to eat their words. Not that I think, like, you know, it's a crazy thought. It makes plenty of sense to think that just some random show based on a Marvel character is going to be good. I guess what I'm excited for, the people that I'm excited to be wrong, are the people that didn't really give it a chance, or were like, of course this is going to be stupid. What is this, Agatha Harkness? Marvel's crazy. They're making just dumb shows about nobody. And it's like, sure, part of it was because of the song, but like, this was a good idea. This was something that Jack Schaefer wanted to make, and they, like The Witch's Road, just materialized it and brought it to life in a way that feels very like thought through, but also it's got a lot of heart, got a lot of character in it. It's really just everything you can want. So main thing I learned from this is give Jack Schaefer whatever she wants. Kevin Feige, just write her a little blank script, like a blank check, but just put a line where the title of the thing is, and she could just do that. Because maybe it's a Wanda movie, maybe it's a Young Avengers movie or series, maybe it's this Billy and Tommy Children's Crusade thing, maybe it's something completely different. Maybe it's a character like Nova, which is just like, I like that character too. let them try it, and let other creatives do things like this, because I think this is going to be really fun, and make it easy for people who are only watching this to get a little bit more invested. You know, make it obvious to those people, like, hey, you know, they're making this other stuff too. You might like, you know, Thunderbolts or whatever. But also, when Avengers comes out, or whatever the next big thing is, like, bring those people on board and be like, hey, you're a person that just watched Agatha and WandaVision and stuff. Some of those guys are in this, and you're going to love it. You're going to have a good time. Because that is what the comics are like. And this feels like a really good, you know, 9-issue series from a writer who had a really cool, funky idea that they were able to execute pretty flawlessly. And it's the kind of thing where even if we never see these characters again, whatever this writer works on in the future, I'm in. Like, I'm down. I'm excited for. So where does this rank? Is this better for me than WandaVision? I'm going to say still probably no, just because WandaVision was so fun. I don't know. Is this better than WandaVision? For me, it is a better complete story than WandaVision was. And maybe I give WandaVision, like, I judge it a little less harsh because it is clearly a product of COVID and, like, rewrites and characters not being able to film together and things like that. I don't know. I don't think, even though I think episode 7 of this show might be the best, I think episode 2, you know what it is? It's because really what I think the difference is what do you prefer? Witch stuff and fun stuff like that, or sitcoms? And for me, it's sitcoms. I watch so many sitcoms. It's my main, like, type of media that I consume. So I think that the fact that WandaVision was able to nail the aesthetics of, you know, Bewitched and Modern Family and stuff like that, that made it feel like something that just I was able to connect with more. But I am sure there are a lot of people who would say the same thing, but about Agatha. So I think that's totally fair. I don't know if it's better than season 1 of Loki. I think it's probably stronger than season 2 of Loki. Is it better than Miss Marvel? Yeah, I'd say probably. I think it had a more tight, like, it just told a more complete story. Miss Marvel was quite messy, especially near the middle. Is it better than She-Hulk? Yeah, I think so. And I loved She-Hulk. So I would say with me, the Marvel Cinematic Universe shows, and I'll say Hawkeye's, you know, in this conversation too. It's definitely not the best one, but it's also good. I will say go, for me, WandaVision, Agatha all along, Loki 1, She-Hulk, Miss Marvel, Hawkeye, etc. That's, I think, where we are now. And yeah, I'm very excited to see what if Daredevil is able to crack that. Because I loved, like, Daredevil season 3, probably higher than all those. So if they can recapture any of that magic, then we're in a really good spot. So I hope everybody had fun watching these. I enjoyed making these videos, and I like making them for all these different movies and shows that come out, especially stuff like this, as opposed to Penguin, which I'm also enjoying. But it's like, yeah, no, it sucks that he did that to his friend. But there's not a whole lot to talk about. But we're going to have a lot of this next year, so I'm looking forward to it. So if you enjoyed this video, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.